Testing, testing. Let's see if this gets to go live. We're going to talk about the movies. All right. Let me. Testing, testing. It's working. Let me share this link. Okay. I don't know what took me so long there. I apologize, everybody, but the system did not want me to, I guess, just open the event that I created a while ago. Every time I tried streaming to it, it just didn't let me do it. So here we are, now streaming like this. And we're going to go back. And what this is all about, I apologize for this taking so long. And people, if anybody was waiting, I don't think anybody was, but we're talking about 2023. We're kind of at a good point where movies are right before the summer blockbuster season. I'll be going over my predictions for that. With Guardians starting in about a week and a half. We had, Mario Brothers, Evil Dead Rise was kind of the end. There's nothing really going on next week. So I thought this was a good point to go back in these first 4 months of the year and kind of pick who the winners, losers are for movies and to kind of start making my top 10, list for the year. I think it's a good, interesting time of the year to start that. And I love just reflecting on the year and what things went well, what things didn't, and see where my placements are on that. If you're here, like and subscribe. Either comment it on the live stream what your thoughts are, or comment down below what have been your favorite movies this year. Who do you think are winners or losers? Who do you think that I was incorrect about by calling a winner or a loser? Anywhere, just put your thoughts down below, and let's get into it right here. So we're going to start off with January, the winners. So January this year was interesting because I feel like there's a lot of movies that came out that were kind of low budget, but were really entertaining and actually brought back a decent amount of profit for how much their budgets were. The first big winner of January you're looking at is going to be Megan. This Blumhouse Universal horror flick, kind of like a comedy horror flick, was made with roughly around $9-10 million, and it got up to be about like 60, 70, 80 million dollars domestic. It's going to get a sequel. It's made its money back and more. This is easily one of the first big hits of the year, and I cannot say without a doubt when it comes to winners in January, Megan was the biggest winner. A Man Called Otto. This was a movie that had a lot of legs, especially in the Midwest. And again, a low budget family type movie. I didn't personally have it that high for me, but it had a pretty good cinema score, and it had really good legs throughout the whole entire month. A Man Called Otto is definitely a clear winner. It's even been good on streaming when you're looking at Apple's streaming charts these last couple months or so. So Tom Hanks in A Man Called Otto, another clear winner in January. Plane. This movie didn't make all that much with Gerald Butler and the cast there. It was simple. It wasn't horrible. It was a lot better than it had any right to be. And that kind of allowed Plane to succeed where it probably shouldn't have. And honestly, I thought it would be a flop. When I've been looking at iTunes charts in the top 10, Plane has consistently been in the top 10 almost all through March and end of February and even into April. So I would say Plane, it's rumored to get like a sequel ship or something like that. But this was actually a pretty big winner, a silent winner in January. And it shows you can make kind of these like, very formulaic, easy, not deep-looking action films. As long as they don't have the big budget, it can be a profitable and it can be a winner. And it was a big surprise putting it at the right time of the month, but it really didn't have much competition otherwise. Missing. Another big winner of the month. It was probably one of my favorite movies of January. It had a decent little run in the box office, made about 30, 40, I think maybe got to 50 million. But another movie that was made for like $10 million had really decent audience scores. It was really engaging and felt very different. Another winning, it's kind of like a second in line of an anthology series. Missing is clearly a winner for me when I look at January so far. As you can see, there's a lot of winners in January. So now every month won't be that way, but a lot of these movies came in with lower budgets, low expectations, and they came out making some profits with some higher expectations and some decent views on streaming itself. And then the last, I think this is my last winner for the month of January was Pantheon. I missed this film. It came out from India, but this is a movie that actually has made a huge global haul. It's actually a pretty decent hit. I don't know if it hit very well domestically, but when you see a movie make 3 or 4 times back its budget in its global haul, that tells me it's a pretty big winner. It's, India has had a lot of films just do very well locally and very well globally, and Pantheon is definitely going to be a winner for January. One of the biggest winners of the year, just with how much money it's made globally, especially at home in India and in the eastern part of the world. But with there's one more winner. I forgot about it because it doesn't really count for this year in my top 10 list of movies that I'll rank. But I saw Women Talking near the end of January after it was announced for the Oscars as Best Picture and Best Screenplay. And I put it as a winner, not because it made a lot domestically and it wasn't, a budget type movie, but I think Women Talking came out at the perfect time with a wide release in America to where movies that kind of when Oscar nominations were very happening and very big, Banshees of Inisherin, The Fablemans. There's a lot of movies that had a lot more momentum going throughout the year, and Banshees and Women Talking kind of came in, and I feel like it played enough in theaters that it kind of got word of mouth going, and it built up to the point where Sarah Paulson won an Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay. And I think that was the goal of this movie, was to try to get enough talk of it during the voting portion coming, leading up to the voting portion of Oscar season, so that it could snag maybe one award. It was probably never going to be a contender for Best Picture, but getting a Best Adapted Screenplay gave it a lot more awards than you saw from people like, Banshees and Fablemans. So Women Talking coming out at the end of January was a clear winner for me. I loved the movie. It was very, very good. That'll be the last kind of we see of this movie because, again, it's not in my top 10 list because it technically was an Oscar movie from last year, but it was a clear winner of the month. But with every winner, there's going to be a loser potentially, and the biggest loser for me was House Party. I saw this movie, and it was my first movie that I've done with this channel for a while that was just straight up bad. House Party wasn't really that funny. It didn't know what type of movie it wanted to be. It took itself really seriously at times, and then took itself not very seriously at times. And it just became overall unenjoyable. It didn't make any money at the box office because Warner Brothers, slow on cash, forced it onto as little amount of screens as possible. I haven't seen it trend anywhere like HBO Max or other places. So House Party to me was a huge loser of January. And again, was just not well placed, not well marketed, and not a good movie to succeed at all. And we'll see a theme with that when it comes to Warner Brothers in the first couple of months of having movies that they couldn't release wide and just kind of flopped and weren't too exciting or happy about that. But that was January down. Now let's get into February. We're going to talk back winners again. And Jesus Revolution was a big silent hit with the conservative crowd and the religious crowd all in February. It came out near the end of the month, but this movie did a lot of action at the box office, a very low budget faith film pick that ended up making around $50-60 million at the box office domestically. So this movie, while it's something I didn't see, and most people I know probably might not have seen it, I can't deny this was one of the biggest winners of February because of that reason. So if you've seen Jesus Revolution, tell me your thoughts down below. I'd love to hear people's thoughts about it. It got really good cinema scores. Maybe I'll need to check it out here at some point. The next winner, as much as I don't like it, I wasn't a fan of it, 80 for Brady is clearly a winner because not only did it do decently enough at the box office to make its money back, I've seen it in the streaming charts pretty consistently in the top 10 of iTunes, which tells me that this is finding its audience on streaming and in other platforms, and it's going to be making its money back in, and I think people just enjoyed this movie. Like I said, I thought it was iffy at parts. My personal perspective, it wasn't great, but I can't deny that it outperformed some other movies in February that were around the same budget and around the same box office, especially after it came out. So 80 for Brady, I would say, is a big winner for I think it was Paramount that put this up. It might have been Universal, but I'm pretty sure it was Paramount. Cocaine Bear. Universal has been hitting with these gory horror style flicks, and Cocaine Bear came in and it made a decent chunk at the box office. I want to say it made about $60-70 million. The budget was a little bit higher, more than your average horror movie, but it had really good audience scores. The critic scores were a little bit in between, and it's doing really well on streaming. This movie is just a fun fanfare for people to watch. Elizabeth Banks put together this a fun, outrageous movie. And when I look at February, the movie I remember the most will continuously be Cocaine Bear, because it was one of my most fun times at the movie theaters. But there's a lot more losers this month than we've had in January. None bigger than Ant-Man Quantumania. Now, this movie probably did make its budget back for Marvel, and it wasn't like a financial loss. But you're looking at Jonathan Majors as Kang, now maybe being out of the role for all those different reasons I'm not going to comment on here. A movie that performed the worst of all three Ant-Man movies in its history. This was supposed to be bringing up the next big Avenger. It was positioned itself like a big action flick, and people did not like it. And the bad word of mouth took what was a very big opening weekend and turned it into a disaster at the box office. A lot of people are going to be looking towards Guardians in a couple weeks to see where exactly Marvel may be at the moment. But after Ant-Man Quantumania, this was a huge loser for Marvel. It felt like it even shifted a lot of tides at Disney and what they're planning to do with both Marvel and other things moving forward. Again, a big loser overall. One of the biggest ones, I think, of 2023 so far. I do think there's one absolute biggest loser, and we'll get into that next month. But Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania had what people hoped was some hype, but turned out to be a dissatisfying movie and a very lackluster box office approach, and really makes people wonder if the MCU and comic book movies, is their time coming to an end overall. Another loser, Magic Mike: The Last Dance. This movie wasn't horrible, but kind of like House Party, it wasn't put out in many theaters. It wasn't really, given too much of a big push from people, and it didn't do well at the box office. Now, this movie might be doing well on HBO Max once it gets back out there at some point, but in my opinion, this was a big loser of the month because it didn't really generate any good word of mouth to it. There hasn't been anybody I know that asking me how Magic Mike's Last Dance was. It came out on Valentine's Day weekend, which is kind of like the perfect weekend for it to come out. So I just think this was a big miss, and shows again, without wide releases, Warner Brothers is kind of stuck in between of how are they going to get these movies to succeed and how they aren't. They haven't had too many winners this year so far. They do have one coming up in the future months, but they also have another big loser coming up in the future months. But last but not least, I think Knock at the Cabin, despite it being a movie I really enjoyed, is a loser this month. It made similar numbers as 80 for Brady in the box office, but you haven't seen this movie be anywhere on the streaming charts for both iTunes and any of the other guys. And I just think it's a big mistake for I think it was Universal that put this movie out, but it just wasn't doing very well. And I think M. Night Shyamalan, it didn't really restore people's faith in him as a filmmaker. Batista was probably the biggest winner of this overall, maybe Rupert Grint, but overall this movie kind of had this discussion for one weekend and kind of got lost and thrown away the rest of the month. And that's why I put M. Night Shyamalan's Knock at the Cabin in the losers category. It could be a winner. It's kind of in the middle. It's smaller for that reason, but I would put it in the losers category. Something like 80 for Brady showing up on iTunes charts and doing well there, where Knock at the Cabin is kind of missing, is my reason why 80 for Brady is in the winner and Knock at the Cabin is in the losers. Next month, we're going to talk about March. March was a fun month because it kind of felt like after Ant-Man Quantumania, you had Cocaine Bear, and there's a lot of these movies that came out that were actually really entertaining and good back to back, and created a lot of discussion online in the movie space, which we usually don't get at this time of the year. The first big winner of March was Creed 3. Michael B. Jordan's directing debut went fabulously well. Again, this has Jonathan Majors in a side character role, but that character doesn't have to come back, so it's not that big of a tarnish on the franchise. And the Creed itself had its biggest box office ever for this franchise. Audiences seem to like it. It's been holding well over time. This was just a very well done movie, top to bottom. And I think Michael B. Jordan, I wouldn't be surprised to see him be put in some type of director role for something else down the road. If we see Creed 4 come out in a different way, but clearly Creed 3, both as a audience pleaser and a box office juggernaut, was a big winner for the month of March. Scream 6 finally hit $100 million domestically, outdoing Scream 5 and getting close to Scream 1 and Scream 2 levels. Now, obviously, adjusted for inflation, Scream 1 and Scream 2's $100 million is a lot more impressive than Scream 6's, but this movie wasn't made with that very big of a budget. So it making $100 million domestically already guarantees a Scream 7 being made. Stars like Jennifer Ortega and Melissa Barrera clearly helped this franchise stay strong. Courtney Cox did a decent part in the movie. Hayden Panettiere came back in her role. I think Scream 7 is going to be coming out in 2024 or 2025, and this franchise has a new kind of lifeblood to it. And I can't think of a bigger winner in this month in terms of coming out, hitting another franchise best for many, many years, making more money back than it could have even spent, and it just, Paramount having another clean win with Scream in the Scream franchise. John Wick Chapter 4. This movie it's starting to end up being similar to John Wick Chapter 3, and even though they spent more money, this is a clear win. It was a $70 million budget. It's looking to make around $260 million globally. Make it up to a $300 million overall, but this was a big hit for the John Wick franchise. And even though it looks like the Continental is going to be the next series here that we're going to see, I think on Peacock or Paramount Plus. I forget where John Wick was from. I should know this. I apologize. But this was a very big winner for March. Good word of mouth. It keeps having decent holds throughout the time, even with bigger competition coming through. John Wick Chapter 3, another big blockbuster type winner coming near the middle end of March. But there were some losers in March. Some that I think were big losers and some that might be smaller losers that I personally hope turn into winners down the road. First, coming into the losers category, Shazam! Fury of the Gods. This movie bombed at the box office. And when it bombed at the box office, everything imploded in the DC world. We had Zachary Levi attacking The Rock. We have the director basically being like, hey, I don't want to do these type of movies anymore. This movie has fallen out of almost the whole entire top 10 in the box office completely. It's just ugly. We all know DC is starting anew. James Gunn announced that, Superman kind of being the start of his franchise. And that leaves Shazam, The Flash, and Blue Beetle on this limbo. And people were wondering if, Shazam, couldn't hold on its own. It's kind of separate for its own thing. But clearly fans are uninterested in DC. And this ad campaign did nothing to bring people in. I think there is a bit of superhero fatigue coming off of Black Adam. You had Morbius last year. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. People are not trusting these superhero brands as much as they used to be, and they're walking away. And this is the biggest loser of 2023 so far. Warner Brothers as a whole is struggling to find a decent movie. We'll get into Evil Dead Rise here that when we talk about it next, but man, this was a huge drop for Shazam and a huge drop for Warner Brothers, and they're kind of the big losers of 2023 so far, along with Disney, in my opinion. Those are the two kind of big losers at the moment. But yeah, no, Shazam, a huge loser, biggest loser of 2023 as an individual movie. It's not making its money back. It had an embarrassing press campaign afterwards. I don't think anybody who is a part of this movie is going to get a good deal moving forward, and it's just a catastrophe. And we'll see how The Flash and other things do moving forward. But if I'm a DC person, I am deeply worried with the next three movies that come out with Aquaman, Blue Beetle, and The Flash, and worried that people just won't tune into them because they feel like they have no point. 65 with Adam Driver. Now, this was a bigger budget, like a $60-70 million budget movie. And even though I kind of enjoyed it for kind of how simple and nice it was made with too big of a budget and put in a time of the year where it was not going to succeed. It's not making its money back. It has okay streaming potential, but it would need to get a lot of views and rentals and digital purchases for it to be able to make its money back. Adam Driver might take this and take this momentum into going, into Reed Richards per se, but this is a cut clear loser for March. It was just way too much money spent on a movie that honestly wasn't advertised well and was put to be in a time of the year to be forgotten about. That's all you can really say about 65. And the other loser, and this one breaks my heart because I love this movie, I would say, is Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. It's another $150 million budgeted movie. It's made over that globally so far. It's about $78 million. It's made its way back in the top 5 of the box office, holding decently well, but there wasn't much audience jump off for this movie, and it didn't have a big enough opening weekend to kind of allow it to be a winner. And even though this movie is pretty well audience scored, decent word of mouth, nobody's really going to it. I think there's other family movies in the marketplace that ate it up. I think it was put in a bad placement. And I just think that, this movie, it's in the losers category right now. Paramount is keeping it in theaters as long as they can, because I think with good word of mouth, with the low drops, that they can suck every little bit of money out of it. And I'm hoping once it hits Paramount Plus, once it hits iTunes and Amazon for rentals and buys, I hope this movie can pick up a lot in streaming, because it was a very enjoyable movie, and it can pick up enough money that it greenlights a sequel. Everybody I've talked about, the worst thing I've heard somebody say is about this movie is it was okay, I liked it, but I want to see what they do going forward, because I feel like they left off with the cast at a really good point, and I want to see what happens next with this group. So I hope we get a sequel to Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. I don't know if we will, but this was definitely in my losers category of 2023 for March, and it breaks my heart because, as you will see in my top 10 list later, I'm pretty high on this movie, and it was one of my favorite ones of the year so far. And finally, the big, it's so small because I almost forgot about it when I was making the slides, but Champions. This movie kind of came out. It has a decent audience score, but it didn't make any box office money to where it's gonna be able to make its money back per se. I don't think it has any streaming appeal. It was just a movie. I just think it's a loser because of that. It's similar. 80 for Brady again has a lot of streaming rentals and stuff like that. Champions, we haven't seen that, and it's been available for a while, so that's why I put it in the loser category. So April. The biggest winner of 2023 so far, without a doubt, the Super Mario Brothers movie. It's over $400 million domestically. It's hitting its third weekend number one without anybody really contending it next weekend. So it'll have a fourth weekend number one next week. And it's on its way to make $1 billion worldwide and maybe even challenge itself, for the overall worldwide animation top movie of all time. It hasn't hit Japan yet. I don't think it's hit Korea yet. And it's doing numbers and numbers and numbers in North America. I wasn't the biggest fan of this movie, but everybody else in the world was. And everybody's going to see it. Everybody is loving it. Critics and myself might not have enjoyed it as much, but it has clearly hit its audience and made people happy. And it's getting a lot of repeat viewing. It's getting a lot of family viewing. And it is clearly so far the number one winner of 2023. And it might stay that way. We'll have to talk about that when we look at the summer movie box office. But there's a good chance that at the end of the year, Super Mario Brothers could be our top movie of the year. And I don't think that's anything anybody predicted in, but that's the case. That's where we're at. The Pope's Exorcist. This is a movie that came out last week. And even though it did drop a bit this weekend, It's a low budget Russell Crowe horror flick, and it took number two last week. It was almost a $10 million opening. It's made about $3 or $4 million again this weekend, with a few $1 million throughout the week. It's going to make its money back, and it came out in a weekend where nobody really remembered. For me, at least, and even people I work with were like, "That movie came out already? Had no idea," and it did well. So for that alone, Russell Crowe's The Pope's Exorcist is a clear winner for me. I am going to hopefully get a chance to see it here soon. I can't guarantee it, but it's an easy winner for April. With this box office, it's coming out in second. It was able to kind of corner at least the weekend with horror for a bit. Obviously, this weekend it didn't, but that's because Evil Dead Rise came out. This movie opened way higher than expectations. Its budget is a little bit higher, around 20-ish million, but it opened around 23 million. And again, nothing new to compete with it next week. Honestly, even with Guardians coming out, has its own little like pocket universe of horror. I think Evil Dead Rise is going to make a clean 40, 50, 60 million dollars in the domestic box office and be a very big win, and kind of the first big win, I think, for Warner Brothers this year. I'm going to look really stupid, and you can tell me in the comments if I am stupid. If Evil Dead Rise isn't a Warner Brothers funded film, and it's something like Universal, it feels like Universal's always winning. That, as far as like Universal itself is the biggest winner of the year when it comes to companies and who are putting out movies. But Evil Dead Rise had a huge opening weekend, decent horror word of mouth. I might have been watching it I was watching it like this, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it being able to watch it like that. And I'm somebody who hates blood and gore and stuff like that, but it was creative, it was cool, and it's really hit with the audience, and it had a B cinema score, which is really good for horror. Clear winner of the month so far. I think it's going to do great on streaming as well, too. Air. It's doing very well at the box office. It might not make its money back for Amazon per se, but it'll eventually hit Prime Video, and I'm sure it'll get a lot of streaming things there. It was a very good overall movie with a lot of good word of mouth. Back last year, this is around the time that Everything Everywhere All at Once came out, and people were like, this is a really good movie. But I don't know if it's going to have a chance to win the Oscars because it came out in April, and really good movies that come out with April really rarely keep that momentum going all the way to Oscar weekend in February or March. But this year, Everything Everywhere All at Once kept that momentum. So I think there's a couple movies here with Air and another one that I'll talk about that were really good, that got decent audience reviews. Air was a much bigger one in terms of the box office, but I think just the positive word of mouth and positive reviews is just a good thing to have for movies that I think that are going to be pushing for award campaigns come next winter. And that's why Air is here, besides being potentially a really good movie. The Chevalier was another one by Fox Searchlight. I watched it this week and loved it. I think it's a clear awards contender later on. It was at the Toronto Film Festival last winter. Just beautiful movie with music and opera and stuff. It didn't open in the top 10 this week, so I was almost going to put it in the losers category, but I saw that it only opened 1,000 theaters, so I said overall, you know what? It might pop in the top 10 next weekend. Maybe they'll open it more wide. So that, this is a winner that may turn into a loser later on, depending on where it goes. But I think with positive word of mouth that it's having this weekend, maybe next weekend you'll see it bump up, and it'll help its award chances later on. But it was an enjoyable movie. It's getting good audience reviews, getting good critic reviews. It's setting itself up decently enough to where if they want to come out and release, have a push later in the year for award season, I think it has a chance to make some wiggle room there. And the final thing I have as a winner here, because it made $5 million last week, and it's making another $1 or $2 million this weekend, and it's still holding decently well. Is a film from Japan called Suzume. It's an animated movie. Our anime is what people most know it by. It's being distributed by Crunchyroll and Sony. It was just a very good film. It had a decent, foreign film opening in America last week, and it held on to a top 10 spot this week. And to me, that's a clear winner overall. It's a movie that, I'll talk more about when I get in my top 10 list, but I just think that's a winner whenever you have a foreign film like that, especially animated Japanese anime that opens and it can hold itself at a decent amount that it stays in the top 10. Now, The Covenant was one that I was waiting to the last day, and it opened number 3 in the box office today. It's made about $9 million, which might not seem as big as Evil Dead Rise's $25 million or Super Mario Brothers $40+ million this weekend, but it isn't that big. Isn't that big of a movie budget wise. And Guy Ritchie and Jake Gyllenhaal are decently well branded names. It's not going to pump out the box office as a big hit, but it's going to do very well on streaming. It's going to make its money back in the box office, and I think it's going to hit its fan audience, and it probably will hold pretty well next weekend too. But that's why I put The Covenant in the winner for me. I was waiting till last second because if it opened like below $7 or $6 million, I would have said no. That even though it hit number 3, it looked like $7 million. That would be a loser. But it came out at $9 million. Probably going to be around $4 or $5 million next week. It'll make its money back domestically, and I think it's going to be a big streaming hit for Guy Ritchie and Jake Gyllenhaal. Now, losers. Renfield. Nicholas Hoult and Nicolas Cage got beat out last week by The Pope's Exorcist, and that's with the Renfield having a major campaign and The Pope's Exorcist being as visible as a ghost. It did not do well holding this week. It's going to be out of the top 10 by the time Guardians comes out. This is one of the first big flops for Universal this year, and just a bad look on Nicolas Cage's kind of where his status is at. The unbearable weight of natural talent last year had a bet. Him and Pedro Pascal did decently well. I wonder if they held that movie for a year and they put it out after The Last of Us, if that movie would have done a whole lot better. But this movie just did not do well and was a pretty big loser for Universal. And A Beau is Afraid, not good audience scores, not good critic scores. Nobody's coming really seeing at the box office. That's a big loser. It came out this weekend. And it does work. The Chevalier might have had a worse box office. It has a much better audience and critic scores rallying behind it, where Beau is Afraid doesn't have a great audience score, doesn't have a great critic score. I think it's going to be forgotten about come award season, and it won't be in the top 10 in a couple weeks anyway either. So, let's round this video and stream out with my top 10 movies of 2023 so far. The only one that I'm not including of the list that you've seen here in my winners and losers is Women Talking, because that was up for an Oscar last year. Now, some of the movies on this list might have also been up for the Oscars last year, and they just didn't get nominated, so I'm not aware of it. But this will stay my top 10 list for the movies moving forward, and we'll see what replaces them as the year goes on. Number 1, though, is The Chevalier. I love this movie from Fox Searchlight. The music and score in it was beautiful. I thought the acting was really well done. I think the French Revolution, even pre-French Revolution, what we got here, is a time and period that we could actually do more of. But this movie, I just very much enjoyed throughout. I'm trying to recommend it for my mom and other people to go see it who like these type of movies. I think it's very enjoyable. It's very, top to bottom, and just a decent story, decent character study, and it seems like there's more that you can get with this character after you watch the movie, which is very rare for biopic type stuff. But I loved it from Fox Searchlight. Definitely my top movie of the year so far. Number 2, Air. Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, and crew did wonders with this movie. Viola Davis, the big standout for me. Viola Davis as Michael Jordan's mom was just, again, but this was a very well-written story. I think the first third of it, you're kind of like, okay, Nike, you don't have to tell me that you're like going to close your division. We know what's going to happen, but it's kind of true what the story was there, and it had a really good character arc for Sonny, played by Matt Damon, and everything else worked really well without it. It was funny. It had decent acting moments. There's a few, you can really tell there's Oscar speeches that you'll see there for campaigns later on. I think Air has a very good chance of being nominated for Best Picture next year. I loved Dare overall, and it's my number 2. I thought it would be number 1 going into this weekend, but The Chevalier surprised me, and it outseeded it. But these two are two strong movies, top 1 and top 2. I see them staying in the top 10 moving forward for the rest of the year. Number 3, Suzume. I saw this movie last weekend. I watched somebody do a box office thing, and it said it made like $5 million. It wasn't top 5, but it made $5 million. And I was like, you know what, Suzume, let me see what the audience score is. And it has like a 96% audience score and like a 92% critic score. So I went to go. I literally got out, went to the theaters, and saw it. I think I saw it in IMAX, the Japanese and English subtitled version, and it was amazing. The animation in this is beautiful throughout. The story of Suzume and the journey she goes on was beautiful and perfect. I think there's a little bit of clichéness in different spots, but it felt just original. It felt very nice. And even though I've heard a lot of people talk about this director's work and it not feeling too original because it felt like things like Your Name and another movie he made, I haven't gotten a chance of seeing those yet. So for me, this felt very original. It felt very fresh. And I just loved it compared to the type of animation we get a lot in the U.S. And it was a story that I think could be used for all ages. So if you see Suzume out there to rent or something, I highly recommend it. It was just a good movie. Put it like next to Bella, I loved last year. Just another great movie coming from Japan. I need to give these movies and these shows more chances because the animation was beautiful, the story was beautiful, and it, again, a huge surprise to me. Going into the month of April, we have 3 April movies here. And I don't know if I was expecting to have 3 solid movies coming out in April to be my top 1, 2, and 3. Number 4, Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. It isn't the best movie overall, I understand. It's not even trying to reinvent things, but I just felt fresh. It felt so nice. It handled the idea of a villain being more than just a sky battle. They had the sky part per se, but they got rid of it, and they really let it just be almost feel like very personal between the villain and them, and there was a lot of the journey of characters coming together and working together. The story felt and the humor felt pretty fresh. The chemistry worked really well. I want to see more from this movie and this crew going forward. I love Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. I've seen it 4 times now, and I just want it to succeed. So maybe I'll go see it a 5th sometime before it gets out of theaters. But this is by far my favorite kind of popcorny flick type movie of the year. And it's my number 4 spot for my top 10 of the year. Number 5, Creed 3. This is a movie that could have seen itself lift up into my top 3 level. I definitely think the Chevalier, Aaron Suzume are like an A tier, and Dungeons and Dragons and Creed 3 are like a B tier. I thought Creed 3 was really enjoyable. I thought the action set pieces were pretty entertaining. I thought the story kind of lacked a little bit and was a little bit lazily put together. But that doesn't mean that I don't think it was a decent enough movie. I had a good time at it. A lot of people I know had a decent time at it. It made it decent at the box office. But that's kind of why Creed 3 lands at number 5. If they would have done the story if Michael B. Jordan and crew got the story a lot better in there, this easily could have been a top 2 or 3 movie for me. One of the best movies of the year. But here it's at number 5. Number 6, Cocaine Bear. Again, a movie that I can't say is perfect. It's not going to win any awards, but it knew what it wanted to be. It wanted to be a funny, entertaining movie, and it gave me a fun and entertaining movie. And because of that, it's my top 10 right now. I love the comedy in this. I love the cast. The story wasn't that deep, but it didn't have to be, and it played to its strength. And I had a great time at the movie theaters. People I've recommended to go to see it in the movie theaters also loved it. They were like, I knew going in it wasn't going to have a story to it, and that's okay because it was a fun time without it. And there was just enough of a story in there that you can pass through it, but Cocaine Bear is number 6 for me for that reason. Number 7, Scream 6. I liked the New York atmosphere. I liked some of the kills that took place in Scream 6. The story might have been a little bit lacking, and I think they could have done a lot better with the reveal. If Act 3 had a more surprising reveal that I couldn't have guessed a mile away, which I did, I could have seen Scream 6 being in my top 5, but this was a decent little fun flick. The comedy was decent, the action was decent. I love the on-screen chemistry of all the characters. I was thoroughly entertained, and that's why it's in my number 7 spot. Number 8, Missing, a movie that I had no idea what it was going to be like. And the fact that it was so creative with it being like on a screen, kind of like this, and having the moving parts throughout. Missing was just a very good time with the movie. Storm Reed, she played a great role in The Last of Us in one episode with Ellie, and she did a great job in this movie. It was just a movie that I wasn't expecting. Like, I felt the acting from Storm Reed was really well done. The tension was there throughout. I was just a movie I really, really enjoyed. And it's in my it's 8, not number 8 now, but even you're thinking about like maybe it should be number 7 or number 6, but I put it at number 8 right now, and I really sat down and thought about this. But Missing was a very good movie this year. Highly recommend it if you see it on streaming somewhere. 9. I can't believe I'm having this because I'm horrible with gore, I'm horrible with blood, and I'm horrible when they do it in horror movies, but Evil Dead Rise. This movie will be a lot higher for a lot of other people, but because I'm not good with blood and gore and the extent of it, I have it at number 9. But I liked Evil Dead Rise a lot. I think if I could take a movie like Evil Dead Rise, which almost made me puke while watching it, and put it at number 9, that should tell you how good the movie probably is overall, and should be the biggest recommendation for some people to go out and see it. But yeah, it made my top 10. And number 10 was John Wick Chapter 4. This is going to be controversial for some people because I know people will say this is the best of the franchise. They loved it, but to me it felt like a lot of pointless killing. And I really went into this movie, and this could have been my fault too. I went in expecting like a really decent story from what people were telling me, and I didn't get it. I do think it had some really great action sequences. The overhead shot in the one building with John Wick was superbly done. But besides that, I was kind of just like this. I never feared for John Wick's life for most of the movie, and it was more just like, okay, you're just everybody who's walking into you, John Wick, is an NPC that they're supposed to be like killers or people with weapons that I should be afraid of, but like they're so stupid and they're approaching you so stupidly that like it doesn't do anything for me, and that's why it's number 10. I still think there's a lot that I can enjoy here. I think for people who love John Wick and that franchise and are looking for those big action movies, it's a must-see and a must-watch. But for me, it just left me a little bit unappealing, and that's why it's number 10 right now, and you're not seeing it higher up on my list like you would for most people. But that's it for me today. It's been almost 43, 44 minutes here. Anybody who tuned into the stream and liked it, thank you for that. I'm sorry that this got delayed a bit and it didn't go to the right one, but that is my top 10 movies of the 2023 so far. Those were my winners of 2023 so far, my losers of 2023 so far. If you've made it to the end, like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what I got right. Tell me what I got wrong. Tell me your top 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 movies. If you've seen 10 movies, tell me your top 10 movies of the year so far. And I'll see you next time with my shorts. I'll probably have one about the box office up here soon. But until then, peace. And my next stream will be about the summer movie season and predicting the top 10 box office for the summer movie season. Check that out probably this Wednesday or the Wednesday